Here we go. Here we go. All right, everyone. Most of everyone that's going to be here is going to be clients of Top Serve. So I want to welcome our clients that are here, and I want to introduce you to my good friend, Jim. Jim is the owner and founder of Profit Solutions Group, but he also works with several of our clients. And Jim and I got to do a lot of work over the last couple of years, and I just think he's one of those good humans, and I like to have the good humans in my corner. And Jim cares about this industry. He's from this industry, so I'll give Jim, just talk a little bit about yourself. Don't give the full intro because I want to give everybody like a minute or two to finish rolling in here.
Sure.
And so yeah, go ahead and talk about where you're from and your football teams and all that stuff that you really like.
Well, I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. My name's Jim Kruspe, and I've been in the trades ever since the summer that I got out of high school. I majored in mechanical engineering, and during the summers during college, I worked for a startup called Davison Plum and Mechanical in Lexington, Kentucky. They're in the second generation now, so it was neat to see how they did it. So I started off in the plumbing arena. All the way through school. Then during school, I actually worked in the office, learned how to do takeoffs, learned how to do all the office back end stuff, right? And then was taught how to price labor, how to do all those things that not very many people get to do. So that interested me into the mechanical trades, obviously, since I worked in it. And then I took a really kind of an unconventional path after getting my degree, and I went in distribution. I actually worked for a distributor who I'd gotten a really good relationship with out of Louisville, Kentucky, called Louisville Plumber Supply. And fast forward a little bit, then I was hired by the R.E. Michael Company as they came into the Lexington, Kentucky arena and Cincinnati arena and things like that. I currently live in the Cincinnati area, Cincinnati, Ohio. I still live in Kentucky. And I opened up the R.E. Michael market for them back in 2003. And then got out of there in 2005, believe it or not, went into business with a classmate of mine and who had already had an existing business. And we sold it to private equity in 2018. So been doing this. I actually started Profit Solutions Group in 2013 when I was partner in the company. So I had an exit strategy. It was actually came a lot quicker than what it was predicted. But yeah, so that's my story. I've got three wonderful kids. My youngest is going to be a senior in high school. Love a big UK University of Kentucky football fan. Got my MBA from Notre Dame. That's the big Catholic school up in South Bend, Indiana.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Most people don't. So, I typically don't like to harp on the educational piece, but I do believe, give a plug for formal education with a background in trade is kind of a very good combination to have. So I've been very fortunate, very grateful that people have helped me along the way, and I just want to give back. So.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And let's kick it off, Jim. I mean, like, one of the big things that you've been working on over the last couple of years is taking, feedback from contractors that you see that are struggling in certain areas, right? And I know you're real big into EOS, and I want you to talk about that and what EOS is, give the 30,000 foot overview. But that wasn't something, that you've always been focused on, but it's been out of pain and it's been out of frustration, I think, for your clients. And you've noticed that maybe that a lot of people are good at certain things, but they don't have it all together. But when you don't have a system where you're following a certain set of rules and processes, it's easy to get completely out of whack. And I think one of the things with EOS is they say, everybody's got to be rowing the boat in the right direction. And I like to give people that analogy all the time, is to say, if you think if you're on one of those big Viking ships where everybody's got the big wooden oars, but you got people on each side of the aisle. But if you think about it, and there may be 100 people that are rowing that boat, but if you've got one going in the opposite direction of everyone else, you are 100% of the time, you're going to miss your destination. Right. And it may only be by the smallest little mark, but that smallest mark could be the matter of your doors open or your doors closed. Right. And so I know over the last couple of years, Jim is like obsessed over getting a system, an operational management system in place. So let's kick it off. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go. So, all right. Well, profit and performance for best practices for scaling a home service business, right? I mean, we all started our businesses because we wanted, well, for a better reason. We all thought we could maybe do it better than our boss, right? But how many people know how to grow from just where they are now? Because this industry has certain walls that we have to climb. Used to be, back when I was in it, it was that $1 million. To me, it's a heck of a lot easier to hit $1 million when you're selling an average system for 14, 15 grand, right? Yeah. But now, especially with the way our summer's coming up, with the refrigerant change, with the perception of the economy, what are the best practices to scale your company? And this can be for a guy that's going over the $1 million to a person that's going over the $5 million wall. So if, Jonathan, do I have control of can I control this?
You do.
Okay. So here's the agenda. We're going to talk about managing cash flow while you're scaling, avoiding profit erosion from your rising costs. Now, who hasn't had rising costs in the last 18 months in this industry? I'd like to know you and know your secret without materials and equipment going up. Technician pay structures that drive performance. When and how to use a fractional CFO. That's been a huge thing in the last 3 or 4 years, is people hiring out for a fractional CFO. Real world strategies for sustainable growth. Those are the things that we're going to be talking about today. I encourage people, if there's a question, please let Jonathan know, or will I know? I mean, and we'll stop. And if somebody wants me to clarify something, please stop me.
Yep.
I want you to engage in this, because if you don't ask questions, we won't learn. So please do that.
Yeah. So someone just messaged and said the fractional CFO has been a hot topic, and they've actually hired 2 very unsuccessfully. And I think that's a common thing, Jim, and I think we're all, as business owners, I think we all can say we've unfortunately gone through this, where we've bought something. Could be Service Titan software. It could be a coach. In my world, it could be software, or, look, I've got a fractional COO right now that I'm working with on a project to help us with something. So, but if you don't have a clear end goal and the scope of work, you worked backwards to forward to figure out how you're going to reach that end goal. And if you just rely 100%, and look, unfortunately, we live in a world where you can't just say, well, they've got the pedigree of this coach, so everybody else put a stamp of approval on them, so they're the right fit for me and I'm going to use them. Right. And you can't just expect that they're just going to be perfect every single time. Like, they're human. They may have too much on their plate. They may not know half the shit that they say they know. So do your due diligence, and you should be able to lay out in the introductory call with that coach, here's what I'm trying to get to. Can you put together the roadmap of how you're going to get me there?
That's correct. And, whether it's coaching engagement or fractional CFO engagement, fractional COO engagement, you, the client, have to outline your expectations of what you feel you need and what does success look like for you.
Yep.
With that. A fractional CFO is not today, it's forward thinking. A CFO is not a CPA that's going to react, right? We're trying to predict the future by data. But if you're looking for a CPA or somebody that because I've dealt with tons of fractional CFOs that didn't have an accounting background. They learn the numbers, they learn how to read and analyze financial statements. I'm not a CPA. The only accounting background I have is through owning my own businesses and looking at probably thousands of profit and loss statements, balance sheets, cash flow statements, all that stuff. So everybody, and you're right, Jonathan, there has to be good harmony and good expectations that are a win-win for both in order for it to be a success. But you also have to have your books aligned, make sure they're clean, because guess what? You get bad data, bad input, what do you get?
Bad
Get
output.
bad output.
That's right.
So, those are some critical things. Let's go on with the agenda so we can stay on schedule here. And again, great question, great comment. So I'd like to know who asked that question at some point, and then we can address it and see what some of the expectations at work met and things like that.
Okay.
Why cash flow is king. Growth consumes cash faster than it creates it. Jonathan you and I have had conversation about this over and over about people scaling to 100 million and where do they get the money from? Right? Now, there's not a lot of us that are trying to ascend to that $100 million revenue because we have to get that over that $1 million revenue or over that $5 million revenue first. So you've got to make sure when you're scaling, what point and what phase you are in scaling, that your profits and your cash flow can actually provide that resource for you to scale.
Now, Jim, folks, I don't want to throw you off time here, but I do want you to focus a little bit and get a little deeper on this here, because I honestly don't feel that most people, whether they've been in business 2 years or 20 years, truly understands this, because you've got, excuse my language, you've got some asshats in this industry that showcase this growth model like it's, they're Houdini or something, right? When you and I know that what this statement, growth consumes cash faster than it creates it, it's just a fact. The money has to come from somewhere. You're either borrowing it or someone's giving it to you, or you're making it on trees that we don't know about.
And right, we want that seed to plant, right? So we can grow them.
But I feel like people need to know this so that they don't get bamboozled later on, and that they need to truly understand why this formula is this way.
Right. And it's that I wanted to really focus on this one because again, we have to, if we want to grow to 20 million, we have to say, how are we going to do it? Because we're going to have to scale walls 5 million, then we're going to go to 10 million, then we're going to go to 15, then we're going to go to 20, right? But that money has to come from somewhere. Unless I'm mistaken, you either fund it through your own profits, you set up a line of credit and you borrow money, or you have private investors.
Yep.
Right? Unless now, there may be a fourth one that if somebody in Kentucky won $167 million. That's the lottery. And what's the chances of hitting the lottery? Right? So we got really 3 ways of growing and scaling your company, because I have seen, and I'm Jonathan, I'm sure everybody else has seen profit and loss statements that show a company being profitable, but they have no money in the bank. So what does that tell you? They're leveraged in debt. So that is one of the most crucial. 82%, you'll see this in later on in this presentation, 82% of companies fail because of lack of cash flow. 82%. So what is the data? 1 in 5 make it past the 5th year. Is that right? Am I right in that?
Yeah.
So Cash flow is very, very, very. So if you're planning on growing, you better have a plan on how you're going to cash flow it, because cash growth consumes cash faster than it creates it. Look at it in your own home. I mean, you can tell even in your own home, people, I mean, how many of you go into a home and this is big old $1.5 million homes and then they have no furniture in it? Right? So it's the same thing. You know, everybody's so focused on that top line growth. Our hope is to get you into that net profit line growth. Paying taxes is not a bad thing. We may think it is, but it's actually not a bad thing because it shows that we've made profit. But if you reinvest that, because guess what? Now, if you reinvest that money back into yourself, you're going to show that's the only way you're going to be able, one of the only ways you're going to be able to grow is reinvest that profit. Because if you don't have any profit, how are you going to reinvest it to grow?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to go borrow money. And then if you can't borrow now, when you sell, yeah, you can get some private equity. What I mean by private equity is an investor that's looking, my neighbor, let's say, is wanting to put he's got $1 million and he wants to get a 10%, 15% return. Well, I can do that, but the money's got to come from someplace. So when everybody sees these $1 million, $2 million, there's money, there's private equity, there's all kinds of shifting going on, because I can guarantee you that people are buying this and buying that and partnering up. And some of them are great. Some of them are great partnerships. Some people are actually doing it the right way, right? There's very few and far between that are doing it. But yeah. And again, we can go on with this topic. We can spend a whole webinar on this topic. Actually.
But I truly think more people are doing it wrong than doing it right, because
Correct.
they've been misled.
Correct.
They've been given poor information.
Right, because we don't know any better.
You know, and look, I mean, I think you and I had a discussion because there was a Facebook post out one day because a mutual friend of ours, Jason, commented on it. Remember? And it was because he owns an air conditioning company, and it rubbed him wrong where this company was promoting, you know, we grew to 50 million in 2 years or something, right? And we did it all, you know, no private equity, no this, no that. And then, you know, our friend who owns his own plumbing and air conditioning company said, you know, called bullshit on it. Right. And he said, no, that's not true. Don't tell people that.
That's
because
right. Yeah.
Unless you can prove you hit the lottery, you can't say you didn't have any financial backing, because it's impossible to have, you know, 80 trucks on the road and 200 employees just overnight magically appear. No. And so stop painting that picture to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. So again, don't believe everything you read on the internet, right? That's especially social media.
Everything's not true on social media. I didn't know that.
Oh, Lordy. So basically what you have, your example of where your cash is, your equipment, payroll, marketing, and vehicles. We know that marketing's not getting any less expensive. We know vehicles definitely aren't getting any less expensive. And we definitely know that payroll is one of our biggest expenses, because the salaries are going up. They're not going down. Equipment, whether it's your cars, or excuse me, your tools, even the equipment that you buy in the HVAC realm, not going down, guys. Not going down. You know, we're past we're past the era of four-figure HVAC systems. We're up there in the $14,000, $15,000 HVAC systems now. So we've got to be smart in how we grow, and be smart on the information that we listen to. So anything else on this piece?
No, I just think it's important that people understand you need cash.
Cash flow is king.
Yeah.
Yep. You got to have cash. All right. So managing cash flow. You need to forecast weekly. Forecast weekly, not monthly. At least monthly. I like to see people forecasting weekly. Now, people say, well, how do I forecast? Well, do you have a budget? How many of you have a budget? I asked that question, it may be very elementary, but I have seen $13 million companies not budget and wonder why they have 5 to 6% net profit. Amazing, isn't it? Huh? It's amazing. So one of the things that I try to get people to do is that, and when they hire us as a fractional CFO, is to create a budget. Because I'm going to show you some real world examples of when we create budgets and when we plan and when we do these things, how it can affect your profit and your growth in your business. Okay. So keep in mind, forecast cash weekly, not monthly. We actually have software that can do that for you based upon data. Okay. So there's stuff out there, there's information out there. If you're not looking, and in fact, your CPA should be telling you should be forecasting cash weekly. I mean, I get surprised at what CPAs don't tell you, right?
But we know that the CPAs are really looking at
reactive. They're looking reactive.
The money that's already been brought in, like you're now, obviously, like you said, they should be doing this, but I mean, you're saying if they only have a CPA, is this something that you're saying they should go to their CPA right now and say, I want to start getting weekly cash forecasts?
Well, we can actually show them how to do it on their QuickBooks. They have cash flow statements in their QuickBooks.
Okay.
So it can tell you whether you're running a negative or a positive. And, I look at my checkbook every day. Every morning when I get up, the first thing that I do, besides make my bed, is I look at my checkbook to see if what my cash, because you got to. Imagine, I'm peanuts now, right? Compared to 5 million. I mean, imagine $5 million rolling through your bank accounts. You have trouble when you're making a salary of 100,000. Do you think you might not have a little trouble when you're at 5 million? That stuff rolling around. So, but anyway, I don't want to get too stuck. Any questions on forecasting cash? How many of you don't look at your forecast cash weekly or monthly or even quarterly? Rhetorical question.
Yeah, because I don't think many people are going to want to raise their hand and say they're not, right? But hopefully it's a light bulb goes off here.
So what you want to do is use a rolling. Does everybody know what a rolling 13, what we talk about when we in the accounting world of rolling 13-week cash flow model? Predictable model of how much cash we got coming in. Okay. That's what, again, we can provide that. Our software provides that. It can show you all kinds of stuff, and we can produce stuff with the AI, everything. Now we can predict out, based upon, even if you didn't have any cash coming in, what it's going to look like. And we can tell you when you're going to run out of money. Kind of an eerie feeling when something can tell you exactly when you're going to run out of money, right? So one of the other thing is I know everybody likes to pump their chest about having a huge stock of inventory in their warehouse. Guess what? Less inventory you got, because guess what inventory ties up? Cash. Use your distributors as your warehouse. How many actually track inventory? I bet you don't. Actually, how many of you attach the inventory as your assets on your balance sheet rather than your cost of goods? Because your inventory on your trucks, inventory in your warehouse need to be put on the balance sheet because they're not products that have been sold yet. They're an asset, right? Every company that I have been involved with since day one has not had their financials properly separated when they have inventory. And so I can tell you,
inventory on the trucks, inventory in the warehouse that hasn't been sold goes on the balance sheet.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep. because it's an asset. It hadn't been sold. It's not a cost of good yet. What has it done? It's sitting there on your shelf, right?
And that doesn't matter whether it's been paid for or it's being funded. Okay.
Does not.
Okay.
Nope. So because we're looking at sucking a cash, right? If you want to scale, we're going back to the cash is king. I went into a client up in New York that had $300,000 in just in money inventory. $300,000. When I look at a profit and loss sheet and I look at the COGS being way out of whack with best practices on percentages, one of the things I know is that some of those things, you know, that's key. It's one of the biggest mistakes people make. And it's one of the easiest things for me to find when I go in and look at a profit and loss statement, right? High cost on materials, equipment, something's not right. I bet you that, and I go in their warehouse and boom, they got a whole bunch of stuff. So it goes against your bottom line. That's exactly right. Jared Studstill made a comment. That's exactly correct. You know, it's crucial. And when you go to sell your company, what happens? They're showing that net profit because we all know that net profit is the multiples are based upon net profit, right? So clean your books up. You know, I can't stress that enough of cleaning your books up. So
you said it's not always pretty, but at least you know where you stand.
Yep, that's correct. Don't assume growth equals profit, right, Jonathan? We talked about this before too. Don't assume because somebody grew to 100 million that they're not leveraged, or somebody grew to 30 million and they're not leveraged so much. I look at companies and puffing their chest because no one does it, of pumping their chest that I'm a net profit of 15. I'm an EBITDA of 25. I'm an EBITDA of 30, right? Because the dollar bills is what pays your bills and what pays you, not percentages. Does everybody understand that? Growth? Don't assume growth equals profit. Now, avoid another trap, right? Keep a buffer reserve. How many of you keep a buffer reserve of 3 to 4 months of operating expenses? How many of fans are a proponent of profit first? Where you keep a separate expense account for your operating expenses and do not touch it. If you don't do it, I highly recommend that you do it. I highly recommend that you read the book Profit First by Michael Michalowicz. Have you read that yet, Jonathan?
I have. Yeah,
what do you think of it?
I think it is it's a super interesting model, right? It's and I don't think it's a model for all businesses, but I think there are certain business owners and operations that need to follow the profit first model.
Right. But I would at least put your operating expenses and your payroll expenses into a separate account.
I agree with that.
Okay. That's what I'm going to tell you. If you haven't done it, make a phone call tomorrow, open up another operating expense account and a payroll account and separate it out. And don't touch it. Okay. Any questions? Tools and metrics. You Klaus-based. I'm again probably preaching to the choir here. Excuse me. QuickBooks, Xero, NetSuite. You know, all those things they also have integrated. You can use AI for AR and your AP tools. Your bookkeeping. You know, charge your bookkeeping to set up a payable, accounts payable, accounts receivable. You know, most of you are residential contractors. Guess what you should be? COD. Shouldn't be even an option for putting somebody on an account that's a residential client. Now, I know some of you are going to do commercial. We did commercial, light commercial, but our terms were net 30. And we incentivized somebody to pay early with a net 10. Because again, cash flow is king, and the dollar today is not worth the dollar as it is going forward, right? Every time the dollar is withheld, it costs us less. That dollar is worth less. So we got to capture that money right away. Okay. But use cloud-based accounting. If you're on desktop, and I'm not a big fan of desktop anymore, I'm a big fan of the clouds and things like that with QuickBooks Online. Much easier because I can access it from everywhere. So key KPIs, operating cash flow and working capital. Okay. Working capital, operating cash flow. Working capital is obviously cash. But you also, even if you don't need a line of credit, set one up. I still have a line of credit from back when the pandemic hit that's still at a low rate. Never had to use it, but guess what? I still have it. You should only use your line of credit for growth opportunities. Any questions about that? Pay yourself. At the end of the year, pay yourself. Obviously, most of you are taking a salary, but pay yourself, pay your company, and then hold those reserves and keep some cash in hand, because cash is king, and you're gonna love having it. And what that does is give you that confidence that you don't have to worry about having money to take care of yourself, because you know that shoulder season's coming up, right? Should be knocking it out here in about the next 2-3 weeks. It's going to get hot. Let's hope. The hidden threat: feed, materials, inflation, insurance premium, fuel, and wages.
Tariffs.
Don't get me started. You and I will be debating that all day. So here's the other thing I will tell you is your vendors. You need to press your vendors. Make sure you're getting the best possible pricing from your vendors. I had a client just in the last 2 or 3 weeks. They're a very strong dealer of a certain brand here, and they were getting priced $1,000 over a system to what a one-man band was getting the same pieces of equipment from. $1,000. Now you tell me what that does to your profit margin when you're out there selling and trying to be competitive.
Why did that happen?
I believe because, guess what? We weren't holding our vendors accountable to make sure that we had the best possible pricing out there. What's the easiest time to raise prices? When there's a scare tactic, right? Perfect opportunities. Pandemic hit, prices went up, right? New refrigerant comes in. What do you think every distributor is going to do? They're going to raise prices.
Yep.
Hold them accountable. Hold them, because guess what? They're going to be just as, I'm not going to say needy, but they need you, because if they lose market share, that's not good. That's not good for them, obviously, right? I mean, we've already got enough battles with the refrigerant shortage. We've got enough battles with the economy, the perception of the economy, the way it's going to, you might as well be able to, look at your balance of installation versus service, because you're going to be probably fixing a lot more than you're going to be installing this year. So dial in your numbers. Dial those numbers in. Make sure, again, I can't stress this enough, and know your numbers, know where your break even is, know exactly how much gross profit dollars you need every day that you're working. Any questions? The next subject is avoiding profit erosion. You need to review your pricing. I put this together last year, but you actually need to review it probably every 2 weeks. Because with the way the price increases are coming out, and again, if you're on Service Titan, if you're on these other CRMs, they actually have inventory modules that will help calculate based upon the price you're buying it at. They'll cost average it out for you so that you don't really have to keep on the smaller stuff. That way you're getting a cost average. That's the way we did it in distribution, because these manufacturers were always raising prices on a 30-day. Copper's a big thing on 30-day cycles, right? Because it's always priced on the futures market. What's metals costing? So at least review your pricing quarterly and adjust your service rates. If you're having a hard time controlling demand where you're booked out, guess what you need to do? There's a thing that we learn in college, and you should learn in an economics class in high school: supply and demand. If demand is high, guess what? Need to charge a little more. Work smarter, not harder. Implement dynamic pricing for after hours and emergency calls. In fact, implement dynamic pricing for the shoulder season, right? That's important to why you know where your break even's at, because where I see people gain in their scale, they know they're going to hit their peaks. It's the valleys that they're going to be raising up to where they're more profitable and breaking even. And that's where they make, and at the end of the year, they make that great profit margin.
Now, I don't know this question. I'm going to pick the brains of the clients that I talk to on a regular basis. But when you go in and you work with some of these contractors, when you first get in there, how many of them are like, what's the ratio that are and aren't doing dynamic pricing?
I'd say only 20% of them are doing it.
And is that just lack of knowledge?
Lack of knowledge.
Okay.
One of the biggest challenges I think that we've all had since I even got into the industry was knowing how to price products, how to price services. And when we're in the hustle and the bustle, summertime, wintertime, we just don't pay attention to it. But think about when you're on your cost of goods, even 2 or 3% can mean how many percentage points on your net profit. Right? So we've got to make sure that we're priced accordingly during even the shoulder seasons. Again, you see all these $29 tune-ups, right? I mean, we all know that we're not making money on a $29 tune-up, right? We're not even making money on probably $150 tune-up, more than likely. So knowing your dynamic pricing, especially after hours, emergency calls, all that stuff, know exactly, because that can erode your profit. Any questions? Any comments? Vendor and cost controls. We just talked about that, right? We just talked about. Now, the other thing, two things I didn't talk about was negotiate bulk purchasing and rebates. Now, I just told you not to buy a whole lot of inventory. But how many of you know what your inventory cycles are? An inventory cycle is how fast do you turn over that inventory. You know exactly going into the summer how many blower motors you've done in the last 2 years. Now, here's what I will tell you: people that bought 410A before it went sky high, bought it back in October, November, probably sitting pretty good right now, right? Because now with prices going up, they're now just adding to the profit margins that they made. Right? So we can control that. Use purchasing software to reduce waste. If you don't have a PO system in place for inventory, jobs, because if you don't have a PO tied to that job, how are you going to job cost? You need a job cost at 1 out of 5, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 3, whatever that is. You need a job cost. I cannot stress that enough. You'll be surprised what kind of what I want to call it, waste is going on, whether it's labor or whether somebody has given you the wrong price with the vendor. So, but how much waste is going on?
Is there and I'm sure you provide something like this when you're working with your people, but is there a checklist that people really need to list out themselves to say, hey, like you were talking about weekly cash flow projections, right? Well,
I'll have all these ready for if you'll send me their email or they can send me an email. Okay. I will be happy to share anything that we talked about on here with checklists and things.
Okay. So, like if that's weekly, the cash flow projections, how often do you say checking with your vendors and your pricing? Is that something that's monthly, quarterly?
So it's basically it's a system and a process, right?
Okay.
So we go back to that. So in your financial systems and SOPs, they'll be set up in those. How often do we've had to review them and revise them because the pricing has changed so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We used to be so comfortable in that, okay, well, we're not going to probably get a price increase for another 6 months. Well, now it seems like it's every quarter. But now it's going to seem like it's every other 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Something's coming out with price increase, right? And then also ask about your vendors for rebates. I got clients around here in the greater Cincinnati, Lexington, Louisville market that get rebates from their distributor. If you don't ask, you don't get. What's the least they can do? Say no. Any questions, comments? All right. Profit protection metrics. Again, track gross profit per job. Again, another good metric is knowing, and again, if you need help on this, do you know what gross profit dollars you need to cover everything per day? Not percentages, but per dollars per day. Monthly job costing analysis. Again, I would do it weekly, not just monthly, but weekly. Recalculate your break even every 90 days. But I'm going to give you a suggestion. I bet you there's some in here that haven't calculated their break even. What do you think, Jonathan?
I know so many of my clients haven't. Right? You know, I'll ask them the question, like, what is the break even number? And they just kind of look at me, you know, like I got 3 heads, and I'm going, well, how can you determine if you can pay $200 for a new acquisition customer, or $300 or $500 or $800 when you don't know what your break even number is before that guy gets in the truck to leave your parking lot?
Correct.
You know, and I think if more people knew that number, they would hold their staff more accountable to say, you can't come back here with your $113 average ticket when it cost you $267 to get in the truck to drive off.
Correct.
That's minus the lead cost, wherever that came from. That's just pure what it costs in overhead expenses.
Right. And Jonathan, you know, we work with people on that.
Right.
It doesn't take very long to figure out, does it?
No.
What, 3-4 minutes? Once we have all the data, we have spreadsheets. We have all these things that can help, you know, calculate that for everybody. So there's a method to the madness. So, again, any questions? We'll move along. Traditional. Okay, so now we're going to talk about tech pay. Again, we're talking about scaling. If you're stuck in the same old traditional versus performance-based pay, if you're stuck in that hourly, you know, paradigm of paying your technicians, you're getting left behind. And most of these companies that, well, I shouldn't say most, but 99.9% of them that are growing and growing at a good clip with maintaining profit are using some kind of performance pay or some kind of piece rate or tiered incentive plan on the installation side. They're paying them by the job, not by the hour. Got a plumbing company in Southern Kentucky. Keep in mind, Southern Kentucky is not the city of Lexington and Louisville. They pay their plumbers a commission. Now, you've got to make sure that you comply within the state regulations, but they are doing very well. They're scaling at appropriate pace, and it's a beautiful thing because they get it. What you do is you get a certain percentage. You know what the percentage of labor is, and that's what you give as their commission. These plumbing technicians are making over $100,000 a year. Pretty solid.
What is your preferred method?
So keep in mind, you got to watch if you go strictly commission. Yeah. Right. If you go straight commission, right? it's, you got to watch the integrity piece. That's why it's so important to hire based upon core values, right? We used to pay a flat a non job rate. Back then it was $15 an hour, which we thought $15 an hour was kind of cool. But then when they were performing a task, a build task, they got paid $35 an hour. But I'm not straight for the hourly pay anymore. Doesn't incentivize people to try to, you know, monetize and maximize that ticket. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I also seen that the pure commission model work. But again, it comes back to making sure that the guys are not going to sell somebody something they don't need, or they scare them into paying money.
Now, you talked about just now hiring off of core values. Are you going to talk in this slide on that, or we save it to the end? Because obviously that goes into EOS, and I want to make sure that's mentioned.
Yeah, EOS is at the end of the thing. We were talking about scaling and things.
Yeah,
but
I just want people to understand what you just said there. What does hiring off of core values mean, right? Because everybody go, oh, I got a mission statement, I've got core values, but that's really not the same when you make it actually part of how you hire, how you fire, how you grow, how you scale.
Correct. All right. Examples of performance pay. There you go. Base plus bonus per sold job, installers or piece rate, and completion bonus. I mean, there's a bunch of performance, reviews, how many 5-star reviews the guy gets or the lady gets. Again, this is all part of our program into how to scale and how to do those things. Technician pay, you pay on KPIs, revenue per hour, callbacks, reviews, add-on percentage. Publisher playpen, that's simple, transparent, and fair. The most simple, the better. You ask me which one I prefer. The simplest one is the most preferred one.
Okay.
Pitfalls to avoid: over incentivizing sales without quality checks. There has to be a cap on certain things, otherwise burnout or unethical upselling. Okay. Signs you need a fractional CFO. We're going to get to that piece here. And I would love for that person that commented earlier in the video of why did they burn through 2 fractional CFOs. So now, scaling rapidly, unclear on cash runaway, no accurate job costing. More importantly, financial blind spots for growing. Those are the signs that you need to have a fractional CFO. A lot of times people say, well, when do I need that from a revenue standpoint? I'm going to tell you, once you start getting to that $2 to $3 million, it's probably going to be a good idea to have somebody looking at it. When you need that full-time fractional CFO, it's probably a little bit past $5 million. So, and again, if you can ask that participant, if he'll answer and give us a little bit of background on what was the expectations that weren't met with their fractional CFO.
Yeah, I was messaging with him. It was over, I think, what their expectations were, as far as, I don't think deliverables and the scope of work was clearly laid out, and what their understanding of a fractional CFO was different than what they got. And I see this all the time. I think some of the questions that I see asked online about a fractional CFO sounds like they need a better CPA. Right. The questions they're asking is more on the accounting side and not on future projections and, things like that. So, I think there's also different meanings that people are putting out there on that whole fractional CFO title. And maybe you can talk a little more on that, of what you're hearing, what it is, what it isn't.
So basically what it is a fractional CFO is a forward-thinking position, just like, again, in the context of a full-time CFO. We're analyzing the data and we're making projections and future plans based upon our data. CPAs, bookkeepers, they're all reactionary CFOs are all progressive, looking forward. CPA backward, CFO forward. Pretty simple. That's how I correlate the two, right? So again, depending upon the engagement that you want and what the expertise that you want, if you're wanting a tax, now CFOs can help you out with taxes because we're going to bring somebody in that's a tax strategist, not a CFO, but he's a tax strategist who has accounting background that'll analyze your profit and loss statement and be able to give you some feedback on where you can save money on taxes. That's legal. Okay. That's about as clear as I can be about the difference.
Yeah, I like
CFO's forward thinking, and if you're expecting a CFO to do bookkeeping, that's not part of the plan. If you're expecting the CFO to fill out your tax forms, not part of the plan. But if you're expecting that CFO to analyze the data and give you projections and coach you on your finances, then that's what they're for.
So maybe real quick, let's assume someone's not working with you. They're working with a CFO, a fractional CFO now. Mm-hmm. They're considering it. What are the key things that they should be wanting, needing, expecting, and looking forward to in order to have a successful engagement with that person?
Well, to me, the first thing that I do, I can tell you what I do. Okay. In my due diligence, I find out, do you know your break even? Do you know what you need to charge per hour, per day to make a profit?
Okay.
Okay. Do you have a budget? That's really and what loans do you have? Again, all those checklists I can send everybody. But basically those two questions kind of fill me out on where, are they, number one, are they profitable? What does your profit look like? And then we look at the balance sheet. I need to look at the balance sheet, look at your cash flow statement. But basically those two things right there tell me a lot of what I need to know, because 80% of them don't know their break-even point.
Yeah, I really think the biggest, the biggest impact I feel that I've gotten feedback from our clients that you work with has really been the operation system, that you've put into place, because someone can tell you your numbers, give you your projection, and that's great. And a lot of people that have the right systems in place, that's all they're really needing.
But that's the fractional CFO, right?
Right.
And do you have like, we can review the slides that I just showed. Do you have a financial system in place? When do you pay your bills? When do you, all those things? That's what we're looking at. Are you maximizing your discounts? Are you maximizing this? Are you maximizing that? These are the things that we look at as a CFO, because I'm trying to put more money back in your pocket and in the future. Right. So yeah, we put financial systems in place.
Right. And I mean, just the EOS part, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. That too.
Instead of saying, I want to go open this department, or we want to grow by 5 million, whatever right. the goal that someone has, how EOS breaks it down quarterly, and then there's smaller obtainable goals to hit.
Bite it off in pieces. Right.
That's right. Correct. And I just don't think a lot of people have that system in place, right? Because they go, I just want to get to here, and they haven't really broken down how they're going to get to there.
Exactly. The benefits of a fractional CFO: high-level strategic insights without a full-time salary. If you hired a full-time CFO, you're probably looking at $150,000 to $200,000 a year. And there you go. On the other side of it, monthly reporting, forecasting, and scenario planning. Now, again, this is gonna rely upon your holding your bookkeeper accountable, right? But we're going to be looking at forecasting, so we should be able to align and make sure that we get our monthly reporting that we forecasted, and kind of guess and see on a guesstimate on what you're coming into before the 10th of that following month, because that's typically when you're going to see your profit and loss. We do scenario planning. Everybody know what scenario planning is? What if What if the Dow Jones tanks? How are we going to shift? How are you going to shift? How are you going to shift for a downturn in business? Now you got to start cutting costs, right? You may have to downsize. We look at, are you running? Go ahead.
I was just I've heard a lot of chatter from inside our clients and out, the election, the tariffs. So now talking about price increasing, manufacturers and things, but it's almost like it was almost like this came as this big, huge surprise. And then people haven't no clue how to pivot. So I guess what you're saying here is the scenario planning should be well planned out in advance of what if this happens, we're going to do X. And if this happens, we're going to do Y. That way you're not holding additional overhead or whatever that may be that's going to rip through your cash flow because you've already planned ahead of time. And I feel like a lot of people probably don't do that.
No one does.
Okay.
Everybody lives in the moment, right?
Okay.
We talk about EOS. The reason why they're not on EOS is because they don't have that 10-year look ahead, right? So if they had that 10-year, now you'd be surprised. There are some people that do it, but the majority of people don't do it. They're worried about today. How do I get through today? Right? Now, you also see people that get roadblocks. I'm stuck at 5 million. You've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get past 5 million. I can't get past 3 million. Well, let's take a look at your processes and your systems. What's holding you back? Right? So, is it money? Is it market? Have you excised all the money out of that market? And now it's time to go an hour north to see if that's feasible to go open up another location. Right? So all that's a little bit more of a deep dive because that gets into multi-locations and different things like that.
But I think that's important. You helping them understand maybe what their real market share is currently and what are the possibilities of that market share. Because I hear some people, I think they're low on what they think their market share is. And I appreciate that way more than when I hear, we've got 40% of our market share. And I'm going, no, you don't. Like you're doing 3 million. You don't have 40% of anything. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Engagement options for any kind of fractional CFO. Monthly retainers are going to be anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a month. You can do a fractional firm versus. We're a firm. I've got people that do fractional CFO work with me. One of them's a client of mine. Another is as a retiree from the Fortune 500 company. And my tax strategist is a former CPA who is now a tenured professor at Xavier University. It holds a PhD in accountancy. And then you have set clear deliverables, right? KPI dashboards, budgets, and quarterly review. If you don't set clear deliverables, whether it's from business coaching, fractional CFO, fractional COO, fractional CEO, if you don't set clear deliverables, you're going to be disappointed. It's a guarantee. Growth that lasts. Don't grow for ego, grow for EBITDA. Does everybody know what EBITDA means? EBITDA.
I do. I got the hat.
Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Typically, we don't deal with a lot of A amortization. It's more EBITDA, because we all deal with earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation, right? Build infrastructure before leads. Jonathan, how many times have you gone into a client where they don't have the back end support for the marketing that you're getting ready to do for them?
Very often.
So what happens when the spigot gets turned on and the back end can't handle the spigot. And I'll give you an example. So in your budget, person's going to grow, let's say, to 5 million. So we have KPIs that we know of and said, okay, well, I need to hire 2 people in a truck to get it moving, right? So am I going to hire once the faucet turns on, or am I going to hire a little bit before so that person is onboarded, trained, and everything to hit the ground running?
I know what the answer should be.
What is that?
You got to hire before.
That's right. So you should be recruiting, not hiring, recruiting year-round. Recruiting in football, basketball, they recruit. They take these persons in for visits. They don't offer them anything. It's just a visit. You're just building that bench, right? You recruit kids that you don't offer to build your bench in case somebody doesn't work out, right? So we need to build the infrastructure, and that could not just be a field person. It could be an internal person. We have those metrics too. Based upon what kind of technology you're using, we have a field to staff ratio chart that we can provide everybody to. Any questions? Strategy pillars. We finally get to EOS, right? Right people in the right seats. Are you setting them up for success in their position? EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. If you've not read the book Traction, I would highly recommend that you get it on audiobook or paperback and read it. By Gino Wickman. It breaks down everything to a 10-year vision. Then we look and say, okay, we reverse engineer everything backwards. Here's our 10-year vision. How are we going to get there? Well, we got to get there. We got to set 3 to 5 year goals, which is the midterm goals. Then we got to set a yearly goal. And then we break that down into 90-day actionable rocks is what they call them to attain so that we can build to get to our 10-year goal. Core values are huge. Mission and vision are huge. And what I will tell you is that when you hire wrong, do you not think that affects cash flow as well? You trying to rehire somebody or for a position cost you, if it's a $50,000 salary, it's going to cost you $75,000. Hire for your core values, the non-negotiables, and then hire from that standpoint. EOS is great. I mean, it literally has transformed my life and the lives of I'd say 80% of my clients are on it now. The other 20% is getting ready to get on it.
It completely changed the way we operate in our company. It just makes it a lot easier when the goals are set. They're in 90-day sprints. Then you assign those people responsible who what it's going to take to achieve that goal. And then when you have the people that are held accountable, and that's what the weekly L10 meetings, are called inside of EOS. When you have those weekly meetings to see, are we on track? Are we off track? And are we all, hitting those KPIs to hit this goal at the end of the quarter? But a lot of times what happens in business, and, whether you're a small company or you're a Fortune 500 company, you have that starting the year off or ending the year, and you're talking about the big goals that we're going to do in 2025, and everybody gets excited and everybody may be all jacked up and ready in the first month or so, but then things start happening, unexpected challenges come into the business, and everything gets thrown off track, and you're just trying to survive each day, like you were saying earlier, Jim.
Yeah.
But in reality, when you have a system And that's what EOS is a system to operate off of, just like our computers are an operating system. When you have that system to work off of, it's just so easy. It's so much easier to stay on track, hold the people accountable, get the wrong people off your team, and get the right people on the team into the right seats.
Yep, exactly right. So we do that. We're an implementer. We can do all those things. We use it ourselves. So it's one of the best things you'll ever do is getting on that model, and you get core focused because you have clarity. Clarity is power. That's one of the sayings that I have is clarity is power. So, all right. Strong back-end systems, CRM, dispatch, financials. The easier you make it to do business with you, the better. Have online scheduling, all that stuff. Make sure I ran into a client 2 months ago that I onboarded, and he only got quarterly profit and loss statements from his accountant. No bueno. Got to have them at least monthly. They should be done by the 10th of every month. No later than the 10th of every month. Now, we're going to talk about, again, as a strategy pillar, reoccurring revenue via memberships. The tone has changed to memberships versus maintenance plans. People are strong in selling maintenance plans, but I know if you've ever listened to Billy Stevens, because this is where I got, I'm big proponent of this guy, of his membership plans. Making people easy to do business with, because guess what? We're all membership based now, subscription based now, aren't we? StreamYard's got a membership, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm paying each month.
Right?
Yep.
And Jonathan, you've been to Billy's shop.
I have.
So, he's a big proponent of those. And he's changing the way, and he's an innovator. I would urge you to watch his podcast, watch all those things to get a better idea about what those memberships are. I've got clients that have taken his advice and gone on to those, and it's been a great thing for them.
I'll tell everybody a little quick story. I asked Billy one time, I was at his office and I was getting ready to leave. And I said, hey, Billy, let me ask you a question. How much do you spend on average each month on marketing, on your marketing budget? And he looked at me and he goes, we don't spend anything on marketing. And then I have a ton of respect for Billy, and I'm in his office. So then I'm like, it caught me off guard. And I was like, dude, don't lie to me. I'm like, I see your Google ads and stuff all the time. Like, come on, Billy. He goes, no. I'm not lying to you. What I'm telling you is we've got 12,000 club memberships, which he did, by the way, in 4.5 years, because I was part of his getting started and knew exactly the day he started and how quickly he ramped up his VIP program. And I said, and he goes, so you go ahead, take 12,800 and something times
99.
Well, he does monthly. So
yeah,
he's like
$8.99.
Yeah, $9 a month or whatever. And he says, that's our marketing budget. So he says, that's what we budget is we're spending our reoccurring revenue from our club membership to continue to grow more members. And I like that. And I like the way that, that he looked at that. And then obviously he's got the data and I've got the pitch deck that I'm happy to share with anyone because there's a slide on it from his software, Sarah, that I found so impressive just from the data that he had from the customers on Sarah. Club member versus non-club member, the average ticket was like an 81% increase. I think on the national average, it's between 60 and 80 or something, right, Jim? I mean, it's pretty substantial. And, and it makes sense because you've got a one-time customer versus a customer, a repeat customer. So there's trust and credibility that's built up in those transactions and those, showing up to multiple times a year to do cleanings or whatever that may look like. So to him, it is all about the club members. It's how they continue to grow their business, and they see a substantial increase in average tickets from their club members.
Yep. and it's a good point you bring up a CRM. You've got to use a good CRM that gives you the data, that also doesn't cost you an arm and a leg to run. Because again, cash flow and a lot of these CRMs can be costly. So I'm sure Jonathan would agree that you got to be careful on which CRM you use, because they can be kind of costly to implement some of those CRMs.
I just say get the one that you're going to use, that you're going to invest in, because there's nothing worse than having software that's not set up properly. And so I will tell you that almost none of the bigger, more complex softwares out there, they don't come out the box perfectly ready to set up for your business.
Yep.
They may sell it to you that way, but in reality, you're going to get something very canned and is not easy to implement your own price book and things like that. So I will just say, if you're going to invest in some of the more expensive ones, and that's what you feel is going to get you to that next level, invest in the third-party company to properly get it set up exactly the way you need to for your team and to be able to scale.
Exactly. Now you need to avoid these traps. Scaling marketing without tech capacity. You've seen it happen, haven't you, Jonathan?
Oh, yeah.
Owners staying in the weeds too long. You got to get out of the owner mentality of the implementer to the visionary. And if you're not a visionary, part of the EOS thing is, if you're not the visionary, you need to hire somebody that is the visionary. Right, Jonathan? I mean, isn't that one of the things that you learned in the EOS, is that somebody's got to have the forward thinking.
100%.
There's doers, and then there's doers, and then there's the visionary. And you know what? We're all great at something. Skipping financial discipline in favor of hustle. Not a good thing. Don't skip reading your profit and loss statements, or say, oh, my CPA told me to go buy a van in December. Well, guess what? Your CPA should be getting with you quarterly, making sure that you're maximizing your tax liability, minimizing your tax liability, but minimizing it smart. Because guess what? For every dollar that you deduct, you only get 25 cents back, and the IRS will do that all day long with you. So you better make sure you need something, because once you spend that $50,000, that $50,000 is only coming back in a $10,000 tax credit. So now you just lost 40 grand, not lost, but you get what you're of cash flow.
Right.
So, and there is times to use loans, and there's times not to. So, and we got, again, your fractional CFO or should go over that with you, all that stuff, to make sure that you're using the money and other people's money wisely. Real case study. I'm going to go down to a thing where I had a client that I engaged in 2022. He was at $1 million debt. He had lost $1 million by the end of 2022. He ended 2023 after working with us, putting systems into place, knowing their numbers, switching to performance pay, hiring a fractional CFO, and focusing on high margin services. He turned it around to a $500,000 net profit. He was an $8 million company, scaled back down to 4.5. I've got the things to prove it. I can send those to you with his name redacted. That's $1.5 million turnaround in 12 months. This is an anomaly. I'm just showing you I've never experienced something like that, but that just shows you the impact that it can have on a company. $1.5 million turnaround. 2024, he added a HVAC company into place. So now he's very profitable.
And Jim, would you say that some of this may be lack of knowledge, but also some of it can be you have some successful business owners that get to 4, 5, 6 million, know a lot of the things, but they're still wearing a lot of hats. They don't have the management infrastructure in place, and there's not this operational system that says you own this and this is what you own. And so even though they may know a lot of this stuff, a lot of things get overlooked just because they're busy. The owner's busy doing a lot of things. So they're not looking at weekly cash flow projections. They're not looking at their relationships with their vendors and manufacturers and things like that, just because there's not this checklist, right? And so is that why, the suggestion is once you get to a certain amount of revenue, but then you're also not to a different place in revenue, you're not going to have the certain team structure there. So this is why a fractional CFO can really come in and help hold the accountability and put those pieces in place that works directly with the owner to help with that accountability piece.
Yes.
Okay.
And it helps them scale to where they're going to need a full-time CFO.
Right.
And now they've already got the financial systems and processes in place.
That's right.
To set them up for success.
I love it.
All right. Key takeaways. Cash is the fuel. Manage it obsessively. Profit leaks are constant. Plug them monthly. How many of your guys sit around or stop at Speedway? We have Speedways here. Or 7-Elevens or Buc-ee's or Wawa's, right?
Yeah,
How many?
Florida.
Text drive growth. Compensate them accordingly. Use a fractional CFO before you're drowning. There's a lot of times when I get involved that it's too late for me to get involved. I can't express that enough. Nothing saddens me more than telling a client that I can't work with them because they need to shut down their business. Otherwise, they'll continue to bleed out, right? Build slow, build smart, and build strong. Jonathan comments. I mean, you hear all these guys saying build fast. I mean, these guys have gone at lightning speed, but you got to see who's the ones that are building, because they've either owned their own business and sold out to private equity and have a ton of cash sitting somewhere, or, they've got all these other kinds of resources.
Well, that's why I was keeping my hand over my mouth, just because I was going to not comment, but that is what I want everyone to see. Like the model for successfully scaling is always going to be build slow, build smart, build strong. You can't, unless your great grandfather passes away and leaves you $100 million in the bank, it's just not going to happen. So stop watching and listening to these gurus that have all done it, and start doing some investigation and ask questions on these posts and say, who's your financial backer? Right?
Had to be somebody.
Had to be someone. Follow the money. That's all I'm going to tell you. Like, just don't get misled and think that you're going to go from 5 million to 50 million overnight. It's just not going to happen. And I just don't really think you want that stress and headache, even if you possibly could. Exactly. Now, if you've got the right team, the right infrastructure, the right support system, like, it's different. So, Jim, yeah, please make sure your stuff up here, because I asked anyone if there was questions. Jared says no. He was texting me, but now he puts it up here. He says no, but he's interested in setting up a meeting and getting things implemented. So
there's my contact information.
There we go. If the website's not up, it's probably our fault, since we host Jim's website. Where it should be up, all right? But if there's any reason with the site,
and Jonathan knows I don't spam anybody, so if you just email me, I will get you the checklists and things. And he knows I'm a no pressure guy, and I do try to help everybody that comes in contact with me.
And I'll tell you that a lot of the feedback that I get from our clients that Jim works with is, his communication between him and his team with our client's team is impeccable. It's very clear of what the end goal and the deliverables are going to be. Jim and I both have this philosophy that, it's got to be a team effort. And I've seen Jim let clients go that it was a one-way street, and, nothing, whether it's fractional CFO or it's sales training, it doesn't matter. You got to take what's given and you got to implement it, and you got to be held accountable, just like, that coach or, implementer or whatever has to be held accountable. So, nobody's going to come in your business and save you and fix it. Unless you hire them full time to come and do that. But I will tell you what my clients like is Jim likes to go in person, at least quarterly, a couple times a year, whatever that is. But, I don't know why they would want to see him. Like, look at him, look at that head, but they do. Jim's a great person to be around. I've got to spend time with him in person. We got to play golf. I've whipped his ass on his own golf course. We'll tell that story another time, but he's good people, and he wants to see you be smart and be successful and win and be profitable. But I just think it's just putting that roadmap in place of, here's my goal, whether it's an exit or I need to be at this profit because this is retirement and I need X, Y, and Z in the bank. It's Jim's got the tools and the people on his team to help you with the tax strategy, the future financial projections, whatever that may be, the systems to be able to have success. So please reach out to Jim.
We want to empower you to make decisions. There's no holding hostage, there's no holding knowledge in the brains. It's you. You're going to get shown how to figure all this out. And you're going to say, oh man, this is kind of easy because it's math. It's basic math, but we don't know what we don't know. I had to be shown. I didn't learn all this. I'm just say, oh, I just know all this. I learned it from somebody. And I was very blessed and very grateful that somebody showed me all the things that I've talked about. And, otherwise I wouldn't have been where I'm at today. And nobody grows alone. And we're all learning. I want to make that, no one knows it all, and all of us learn every day. If you're not learning every day, you're going to die.
That's right.
So right. I've enjoyed this. Please reach out. I don't know if I need to keep that, up there. But
no, anyone that's here, anybody that watches the replay, in the email that we send out, we will be putting Jim's contact info and connections, make it super easy as well. And then I know Jared, I'm going to send an email connecting you to Jared now. So he's one of our great clients out of St. Pete, Tampa, Florida area, plumber, and got big goals, and I have no doubt that you'll help him get there. So
I've got a client over in Cocoa Beach and down in Port St. Lucie. So just so you know, Jared. Perfect. So I go to Florida at least once a quarter.
I love it.
All right.
Jim, thank you so much for
Jonathan,
your expertise here with us, and we're looking forward to getting all the positive feedback. I'll send it your way.
Good deal. Thank you, sir. Yep.